Okay, welcome to the Stellify podcast. And on today's podcast, I'm joined by a woman who is really a bit of a legend and whose work has undoubtedly opened countless eyes to the unseen forces shaping our world. Sofia Smallstorm first came to prominence with her groundbreaking 9/11 documentary titled 9/11 Mysteries, which was one of the first, maybe the first, Sofia, 9/11 movie aimed at the mainstream to challenge the official narrative. And this movie most certainly helped many people start seeing through the veil. And since then, Sofia has become known for her very deep research, her regular in-depth newsletters, and her ability to connect dots that many others often miss. And in this conversation, I hope to explore how Sofia began this journey, what drove her to investigate 9/11, and how her thinking has evolved since then. I would also maybe like to delve into an area that is clearly within the public consciousness at the moment, and that is the rise of artificial intelligence and its potential to mimic or even replace human love, particularly among the vulnerable, and how even amid this we can reclaim our power as creators of our own reality. So welcome, Sofia. It's an absolute honor for you to come on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for discovering me and contacting me. I mean, really, I don't think I'm that great. I just kind of stumbled into all this. And one of my favorite sayings is, a straight line is the quickest way to the wrong place. Right? So even if you have an intention, a destination, it's going to be much more interesting to encounter what you do on the way there, right? That's really your life. And these good intentions that I want to be this, I want to be an airline pilot when I grow up, and you never end up being, I mean, you can become an airline pilot, but your life is really what happens to you around that, right? And sometimes you never get there. You're never the airline pilot. You're something else. And so my dad used to ask me when I was very small, what do you want to be when you grow up? And of course, like many little girls, I said a nurse, right? My father would get annoyed and he would say, no, you want to be a doctor, not a nurse. And I didn't know why I should want to be a doctor, because to me, doctors were male and I wasn't. And so I couldn't really put that together because I was very, very young, but I left it alone. And so I'm neither a doctor nor a nurse, because had I been either, I would have been brainwashed.
Yeah, too true. Too true. And you wouldn't be putting out the work that you're putting out now, that's for sure. And
I
making
know.
big changes to people's lives that you are clearly doing.
I mean,
So
really, I might have broken free of that training, but generally these people who go, especially doctors, they are so deep in debt. And that's the thing. One should never follow the money in one's own life, I've learned. You don't just stick with something because you owe money and you have to do it, because that just, you wake up in dread every morning.
yeah, absolutely.
And it's actually not that hard to break free, but I think we're always worried about what other people are going to think of us, and what are we going to do? The great unknown, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. There's a conditioning to that, though, isn't there, Sophia? I mean, I felt the peer pressure, or like you say, the parent pressure of keeping that job. My dad had a job for 30, 40 years that he hated. He absolutely hated it, hated going in each day, made him miserable. And when he retired, he was a different man when he retired. But it was almost, that's still the right thing to do, to find a job and stick with it, which I've never have, by the way, because it made me ill. Funnily enough, I had a job that was paying reasonably well, keeping us in a nicest house and this, that, and the other, and putting food in our mouths. And I'd be there on a Sunday in complete terror of anxiety for the week ahead because of the pressures that job gave me. And
Yep.
it's not a life. It's not a life to live.
And we were just saying before the show, or I brought up how I learned from Zach Bush. He's quite well known. He's an MD and he's a researcher, and he has formulated the product Ion, which is in my little store, avatarproducts.com. And it's a gut rehabilitator, but it is not a probiotic. It's completely out of the box, completely. And I take it every day. But Zach Bush said, I heard him say on a podcast one day that when you have an experience that's really devastating, or you get very upset, or something terrible happens to you, or somebody dies that you really care about, he said, I swear this is what I heard, the good bacteria in your gut just keel over and die.
Yeah.
And the bad bacteria roar to their feet and go, yay, now it's all about us. And they start growing. And the good bacteria, as long as you are devastated and upset, they cannot regain their foothold. And I know, I have thought about this so much. When you are, let's just say, not optimally happy or even moderately content, you know, it feels like there's something filling you and growing in you, and you don't like it, and you don't want it in you, and you don't want to be that energy, and you want to get rid of it. But your fear is very gripping, and it keeps you in that state. And so I think it's very important to get rid of that fear. That is the most important exercise you can work on. And I think, I'm not trying to give advice, but if you just sit in the moment, in the minute, in that present minute, and you go, I am okay right now. I'm okay. And you don't think about the future, and you don't focus on what just happened and all the past, all the crap that's ever happened to you, then you're okay. And that's how you can kind of loosen yourself from this grip of this ugly dragon that's been with you for so many days.
100%, Sophia. I often say when I have a client, because I do Reiki and I do some counseling as well, that present moment is there is nothing else, is there? There's only right now. There's only right now. Me and you are talking, and this is wonderful. The whatever's in the future doesn't exist at this point. It's just a state of mind.
Yes. And, I've been looking forward to this podcast because you're such a nice person. You're such a great person. And I think you're very deep, very deep.
Oh.
It's important that I've encountered you. I can feel it and I know it. And I hope, we continue to talk. But I've been saying to myself, I have a podcast with Stellify on Sunday. Yes, yes, yes. I'm looking forward to it. And it's been like a destination point of my week. I'm not kidding.
Oh, that's really sweet because, I mean, you like I said in the intro, to me, you are a legend. You put out there a 9/11 documentary that has probably woke up thousands, if not millions of people to question the narrative. That is quite something, really. And I know, speaking off camera, that came at a massive personal risk to you putting that film out. And we should all be so grateful for the work that you've put in there, Sophia. So I'm totally honoured to have the opportunity to even have a conversation with you. I'll be honest, it's a blessing.
No. I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't know how to do that. It just kind of happened. I had to learn. And I've done that before. I've had to leap to my feet and figure out how to do something. And you have to spend lots and lots of money. You have to invest. I did that. I took out a credit line on my house to do that, and I was spending gobs of money. It was so expensive, thousands of dollars. I worked with professional editors, composers, DVD replication was something like $35,000 at the very end. And it was so expensive. But I knew, this is the whole thing. I knew I had something good. I just knew it. And so I figured, okay, I've got to put out the courage. I have to do it. I have to put out the courage, you know? And I did. Yeah. And,
It's amazing.
you know, sometimes, even in my store, oh God, I saw this YouTube video. It was a few months ago. I'm fascinated by, you know, sewing. I love sewing because it's a form of architecture and you get to work with your hands. And I'm very perfectionistic. So
Yeah.
it has to come out right. And you really have to think it through. How do I do this? It's a form of engineering. And so
Yeah.
the classic beanie that people wear is this like a skull cap, and it's not attractive. Okay. And there are a lot of shielding beanies out there against radio frequencies, cell phone radiation, and Wi-Fi radiation. And I ordered a couple and I looked at them and I thought, oh, these are awful. They would look terrible. They squash your hair. And then I was looking for patterns for how to make hats and things. You know those Nepalese hats, and they
Yeah.
have those little ties. I was looking at those patterns. I don't even think there are patterns. I was going to buy some hats and take them apart. And
Okay.
see, okay. And then I found this beanie on YouTube that is really made from a rectangular piece of fabric, and you fold it these different ways. It's almost like origami, and you sew it and then you flip it inside out and it comes out. It's called a beanie with a twist. And
Okay.
I started making shielding beanies out of that.
I
And
love
they
it.
don't flatten your hair. And they actually it's kind of like a slouch hat. And I started buying all this fabric. And the shielding fabric is so expensive because you have to buy jersey knits. And
Okay.
I'm telling you, that stuff isn't cheap. And I told
Yeah.
myself, just do it, just do it. Buy the fabric, do it, figure out how to make these. And they were very hard to sew, very unwieldy. But I learned how to do it, and now I can do it. And I'm happy, you know? So one has to rise to the challenge, figure it out, because there's nobody to teach you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. It's about just dusting yourself off and having a go, isn't it? And just pushing yourself through there. But I mean, I know I might be repeating it. I don't mean to so much, but that 9/11 document, that's a huge task. I don't think people realize how big a job that is. Plus, you narrated it, and it's fabulous. If you've not watched it, watch it. It is one of the best 9/11 documentaries out there, bar none. It's
Well,
great
thank
work, Sophia.
Well, you know, I had a really good video editor, but he didn't do anything on his own. I had to go through several video editors before I found him. And of course, I had to
Yeah.
pay them all. But then when I found him, after working with him for 15 minutes, I knew I had it. He was the guy, and he didn't know a thing about 9/11. And I would have to bring pages of my narrator script in. I brought 1 or 2 pages every day, and I sat next to him, and we put the whole thing together. And the music was another huge challenge. I had to go
Mm.
down to the composer's house. I had to play the piano. I got up on some kind of a bench and I had to sing. And he wrote me, I think it was something like 42 pieces of music in 2 weeks because we
Wow.
ran out of time. My other guy bailed on me that I had
Oh,
lined up before. And then we scored the thing together. I mean, I had to go every day to this guy's house, and he was way on the other end of the county.
yeah.
But you have to do it. What else are you going to do? You have to finish it, you know, finish. You started it, now finish it and give it
Yeah.
everything you have.
Were you proud of the achievement when it was finished? Were you happy, or were you?
Well, again, I'm very self-doubting, but I
Mhm.
knew it was good deep in my heart. But then the
Mhm.
public really reacted, and it was a very positive reaction. So I was really happy with that, you know, and I think somebody told me much, much later that it got 8 million views. That's when we had Google
Wow.
video in the first 3 weeks. And then Google
Wow.
suppressed the counter. So anyway, that's the world we're in. They're going to suppress the counter on you, you know, in all different ways. In all different ways. If you do something that's novel and unique, you're going to be chased out of town.
Yeah, it's true. This realm certainly does things like that. That's for sure. May I ask, Sophia, what first inspired you to start questioning sort of mainstream narratives? Is there anything in particular that triggered you at any point in your life?
I don't really know if I go back far enough. I mean, I was always reading different things. Some of the new age type of literature I was reading, trying to understand it. And
Yeah,
this whole terrorism thing didn't feel right at all. You know, it just felt like it was nonsense.
yeah.
But it was there. Arab hijackers, Arab hijackers. I've since learned that it wasn't Arab hijackers, you know, and I'm not talking about 9/11. I'm talking about events that preceded 9/11. It was
Yeah, yeah,
people posing as Arab hijackers. But anyway, so when 9/11 happened, I actually had a phone call I was a book doctor, which is a person who helps other people shape their manuscripts together so that they can be published. And those were the days when we didn't have print on demand. And I mean, really, very few people had computers. You didn't
mhm,
just sit down and type out a book and then put it on social media and sell it the way that you do now, you know? And so I had this client, she was a therapist, and I had helped her with her book. I had read it many times, and she woke me up. She rang the phone, woke me up at 8 something in the morning, and she said, "Sophia, you must turn on the TV." I said, "Why?" And she said, "You have to turn on the TV. I just called my daughter, and the second person I thought of was you. You have to turn on the TV." I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because a plane has hit one of the Twin Towers." I said, "What? I'm supposed to turn on the TV because of that?" And I didn't know I had no idea as to the, you know, dimension of this event. So I
mhm.
just hung up and I thought, I'm not turning on the TV. Well, I mean, what? So then a little later, of course, one of my neighbors came over and he told me planes had hit the Twin Towers. And then I called my mother in New York. And it was hard to get through that day because everybody was on the phone. And my
Yeah,
mother said to me, "Yes, and one of the buildings just collapsed." I said, "What?" And she goes, "Yes, it completely collapsed." I said, "That's bullshit." That was my word. And my mother goes,
mm,
"No, it collapsed." I said, "Yeah, but no, that does not make sense. That does
yeah,
not make sense." And I never looked at it further, never looked at it further until
right.
a few years later when I met someone who had a DVD and it was by Eric Hufschmid, and I watched it and I went, "Oh, okay. All right. I get it. I was right to say that the BS word."
Mhm.
And that's really how I got into it. And then, you know, when you bother to reach out, I actually asked this person who's lent me this DVD how I could get in touch with the guy who made the film. He made the first documentary, Painful Deceptions. He had written a book called Painful Questions. And to my shock, this friend of mine said, "Oh, my mom knows him." I said, "What?" And he said, "Yes, yes, my mother knows him." And I said, "Well, can I get his number?" And so I called him. And this, I think, is the difference. All right. He answered the phone, and I just told him that I knew so and so, the son of so and so, whom he knew. And he said, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "Well, and why are you calling?" I said, "I want to help. I want to help. What can I do?" And
Brilliant.
he was shocked. He said, "Nobody calls and says, 'I want to help.'" And I said, "But I do." And so what I ended up doing was I didn't do it myself because I happened to know somebody who was a very good Macromedia Flash artist.
I
And
used to use Macromedia Flash. I
yes,
remember
he's
Macromedia
one of
Flash.
the,
Yeah.
I was told he is one of the best you'll ever find. So I contacted him and I said, let's make a little flash movie. And we did. It was 3 minutes and we put it online and it went, we just emailed it to a few people. It went viral.
Oh, I
It
bet it
was
did.
going nuts. Everybody was talking about it. And I thought, I helped. I helped. Oh my God, I really helped. And that's how it all started. Okay.
That's amazing. I mean, yeah, I was like so emotionally charged with that moment, with that event. I'd been to New York the year before, and I'd been up the Twin Towers, and then I'd booked. I love New York so much that I booked to go again the year they came down, but over Christmas and New Year for 2 weeks. So when it happened, I was at work at the time, and everybody, all the staff members, I worked at a college, and all the teachers and all the support staff were all in the staff room watching the TV as the news reports were coming through in complete shell shock. And I was emotionally bought in with that narrative. And I went to New York and I spent time with firemen and various others, and we went around Ground Zero. And I was literally bought into the whole narrative. And later on, when I had my awakening back in it's 2012, that's when I would have come across your work. And I remember going to my mother, actually, Sophia, and I remember saying to her, this story about 9/11 isn't what we think it is. And my mum was like, but why would they do that, Anthony? Why would they do that? And it was a strange period where all my friends and family, every time I mentioned it, were, are you crazy? You know, to question the mainstream narrative. So what was it like for you? I mean, you made a film on it. Were family members questioning you at that point?
No, my family, luckily, they're not quite as, let's just say, extreme as I am in terms of the depth of the information that I've gathered, but they were all awake to some extent
Brilliant.
and they accepted it. My family has never been high on praise for me. So they kind of accepted it. I mean, I also lived on the other side of the country. And I had one brother who was living in London at the time. So everybody was far away from me. It's not like I encountered my family on a daily basis. It was just telephone calls. And they were aware of 9/11 mysteries and the rest of the work I was doing. But they didn't really get into it with me. I had to become kind of like a Pluto in my own world, though, because the more you know about this stuff, the less likely it is you're going to find compatible friends and, to just kind of hang out with and go to dinner with, because invariably you either have to sit there and zip your lips or you try to enlighten them a little bit, and it becomes, you have to tiptoe, and you see these very looks of consternation crossing their faces. And then you realize that you have become a persona non grata because your information is really unwelcome. It upsets their apple cart too radically, and they don't want to have to deal with you frequently. And that's really how it's been. So you end up living in your own little pod, and you say hello to people at the post office and the grocery store, but you don't have friends I have tons of friends, people like you that I can call up, but they live in all kinds of other places. So it becomes tough to be isolated, and it's almost a form of ostracism, And a lot of people have gone through this. I had a poll on my website about social contact since you woke up to 9/11, and I don't know that I still have that. I mean, I think I have the poll on the back end, but I kind of took down my 9/11 website and just left aboutthesky.com up, because then I got into the whole chemtrail thing, which is another ball of wax that you have to, peel people's eyelids back on, because they cannot see what you're seeing. I have come out of the store and looked up at the sky streaked with white lines, and I have looked up like I was doing drama, put down my shopping, put my hands on my hips, looking up, gasping, and nobody does the same. They hurry by, they have their destination, which is to get inside and get their stuff done.
They do, and like you say, though, it's they don't want to burst the bubble, do they? It coming out of that bubble is frightening, isn't it? Because the world isn't as safe. If the people that we are expecting to look after us, be our governments, are potentially involved in harm, that's a frightening concept, isn't it? And the cognitive dissonance will kick in, and we saw that heavily in 2020. And I think a lot of people will relate to your story of friendship relationships, because I think a lot of people lost friends. I did in 2020, when I was actively trying to, in my mind, through my own heart, because I care, to help them look at a different narrative that was being pushed in their direction. But that only caused conflict, unfortunately. So it is really tricky.
Yeah, it is very tricky. And by then, I was already advanced into my own terrain, I mean, it's almost like you inhabit another dimension. And yesterday I was talking to somebody about the Charlie Kirk shooting, and I gave him some information about it, and he was stunned. He had been to the memorial service in Arizona, and he told me it was 70,000 people, and then I read it was 90,000, whatever, however many tens of thousands of people. And he kept going, "You're kidding me. You're kidding me. How do you know this?" And I said, "Oh, I don't even look into this thing, but I have come across certain things, and I'm very friendly with Jim Fetzer, and he's really looking into it." And I gave him some points, and then I sent him some stuff. And then he said to me, he said, I said, "Do you want to talk to Jim Fetzer? I mean, I'd be happy to put you in touch with him, and you could let's ask him, what is the most effective deep dunk you can get on this? And I'll have him send you whatever." He's been doing interviews and discussions for weeks now, 2 weeks or whatever.
I love that.
And he goes, this is what he says to me. He goes, "No, I don't want to talk to him. I'd rather talk to you." And I'm thinking, "Oh, all right. This isn't even my specialty, though, right?" So he says to me, "Sofia, what is it like for you? What does it feel like to be dealing with so many people who don't know anything?" And I said, "I know. I was just thinking about that last night." And I said, this is what I thought of last night. This greater public consciousness that is so dense. It's so denying, let's just say. It's so unaccepting of the stuff that we know, and we've been typing to each other and calling each other for years and years, and we have our books and we have our videos and we have our notes and our newsletters and whatever. But these other people, they don't have all of that. They live in that blue pill cloud, right? Matrix. And I said, and to me, I was thinking the other night, it honestly feels like, picture the biggest stone you can imagine, that stretches above you to either side. It's huge and it's gray and it's granite, and you've got your shoulder against it, just you, little old you, and you're trying to move it, and it just won't move. It's just so big. And it's all of them. That stone is that consciousness. And
Yeah.
it's so big. And your shoulder, that's all you got.
It is, but you what you do so wonderfully well, and obviously with your movie, is plant seeds, and I think that's all people can do. You can't take a horse to water, can you, and expect it to drink, can you? So if it's like the situation we have in the UK right now regarding the fact that Keir Starmer has announced that digital ID is mandatory to have a job. A lot of people are not educated enough to realize the pitfalls that this digital ID will have, and we have to try and plant the seeds so they resist rather than just accept it. But it's tricky because it brings, again, it potentially brings conflict.
Well, yes. I mean, Anthony, I stopped being someone who really talked to the general public. I decided I'm going to be a researcher's researcher.
Yeah.
And that's really what my newsletter is. It's to go deeper than the average viewer online wants to go. And, if they like it, great. They can follow my stuff a little more. But I don't want to enlist on the level that is just about ripping things apart and discovering fallacies and traps. And I want to go in the rabbit hole, deep in the rabbit hole, and see how far that rabbit hole goes, which takes you into another dimension. It really does. And then you see how they work this dimension, knowing what they know about what's bigger than this dimension. I think that that's really the key to it. They know way more than we do. This linear world that we live in, this cause and effect world, they know a lot more about dimensionality than we do. And we kind of are stuck by mutual agreement and mutual contract, you could say, in this realm that is it's very dissatisfying, a lot of it, You and I were talking about that.
It is very dissatisfying, and but that you've opened me up a little bit to where I wanted to go next, and that is your newsletters. And you often weave together sort of science and culture and consciousness, obviously, as well. And how do you decide what to investigate? Is it something that just comes to you, or because your newsletter, I mean, I've been grateful that you've shared a few with me, and I've managed to read a couple, and they're very in depth, they're very detailed. They're not an average newsletter.
No,
So
it's not news. It's not cut and paste from articles and put them together. And it's not for everybody. I try to make them very engaging, and there's definitely a voice. My voice is in those things, and they start in one place and then they wander through this jungle. And then you, as the reader, I think people have told me there are threads that keep getting pulled out of the jungle. And by the end, those threads are tied up and I've understood something, right? So I can't tell you how I do it. It's just my nature to do it like that.
And how long have you been doing that? Is it since about 2015 or something? I
No,
think.
since 2010, I think.
Oh wow, even further back.
Yeah.
Quite a long time.
Yeah, I was encouraged to do a newsletter in print. I mean, it's hard copy. It goes hard copy in the mail, and people tell me that they take themselves out for sushi when they get my newsletter, or they take it to bed and they read a couple of pages and then they think about those pages, or they highlight it, or they put it in a big binder with a 3-hole punch and they save them all. So I'm very honored that people do that. I don't have a huge list by any means, but the good thing about the newsletter is It has helped me to gather my information. It's in written form. If people start asking me, well, what do you think of blah, blah, blah? I say, oh, I wrote a newsletter about that. And I have my own very rough kind of index, and I can look through it and go, oh, that was, June of 2016 or something. And then I can pull it up. I can refresh my own memory. I can send it to them. But a woman I knew, she was very well known in a certain field. She had a newsletter, and she also had a copy machine. I mean, I don't have that. I have to go down the road and get it copied. And she would write a newsletter. She had, I think, 4,000 people on her list, and they gave her masses of donations. That was the way that she funded her research and her work. And she produced beautiful books and all of this. So she kept telling me, you have to write a newsletter. And I was receiving her newsletter, and I said, Mom, what shall I put in it, though? She goes, anything. I said, what do you mean anything? She goes, just make it chatty. The chattier you make it, the more they love it. And I thought, well, I can't just chat like this. I mean, I'm just typing chattiness. I can't do that. So the first one I did, I decided to give it a whirl, have a crack at it, was I had been reading online the series of articles produced by Dave McGowan on Laurel Canyon. He had this on his website, right?
Yeah.
And so I was reading those, and I went, wow, this is wild. Because I was one of those kids that, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and all these Joni Mitchell, and I'm finding out these are all kids from the military, and they don't even know how to sing. And
I've got a picture of Jim Morrison up here.
Yes, Captain Admiral Morrison.
Admiral Morrison, yeah.
Right. And, the USS Maddox and Vietnam. And so I just thought, okay, I'm getting chills. My hair is starting to, how it stands up on your arm.
Yeah.
All right, this is it. This is going to be my subject. I don't know how I'm going to write about this, but I'm going to write about it. And I did. And it became my first newsletter. And how did I find out who to mail it to? I had kept a list. I wasn't sure why I was keeping this list of customers from my store, back from the DVD days, the books, the bumper stickers, the whatever. And I had kept a list of names and emails of people who bought most frequently from me. And I figured, okay, they bought this much stuff from me over the past few years. I don't think they'll object if they get a newsletter in the mail from me. So I sent my newsletter out to 250 people. It took me a long time to stuff those envelopes. And I think I put in a little slip saying, this is my newsletter. I'm starting it. If you would like to subscribe, please make a donation of $50. And I actually got a list of people out of that. It was small, but that's how it grew. And then I did the next one and the next one. And I just picked a subject that really grabbed me for some reason. And I included chattiness. Always must have chatty content. And so I was off to the races.
And you're a very good writer, though, aren't you? Because obviously you said before you were involved in helping people with their books anyway. So you've certainly got a knack for that. And your narration of the 9/11 as well. You're such a good writer.
Thank you. I was a writing major in college, creative writing, journalism, English. And then I worked in magazines and publishing. I worked for literary agents. So I come from you could say, publishing background. And so that helps. And I took a 3-week typing course in high school, and that really has helped me in my life, right? 3 weeks out of a notebook with exercises.
I was very fortunate, like I said before, that you sent me some. And they are very inspiring as well. I mean, this is the thing. It's not just a newsletter. It's not your average newsletter. And one of the ones you sent me, and I remember saying this to you on an email, was a great reminder for me at that time, because I'd started to find myself a little lost in my life again, and I was starting to feel overwhelmed. So, and this particular newsletter was centered on the power of the mind, and that we're creators of our own reality. It mentions Joe Dispenza quite a bit, and it was synchronistically, and we've talked about that kind of thing as well. It was perfect for me. But in that newsletter, it also mentions certain neural grooves get burned in, especially with fear, crisis, repetition. How do you feel that people can shift out of those old loops? Is there anything that's worked for you on a personal level with those moments we find ourselves in, those negative moments?
Well, you have to develop awareness of it. You have to kind of split yourself into two people. You have to be yourself that's going through all your emotions and your stuff that you have to do every day. And then you have to be that higher self that watches you, kind of like your own guardian angel. And when you catch yourself stuck in this neuronal network of repetition, you have to tell yourself to cut it out, cut it out. And one way to do it, I read a book once when I was a book doctor. There was a woman who she had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She's since died, and she wanted to write a book. And she heard that this is what I did. I helped people with their books. And I said, well, all right, so what do you want to write in your book? And she said, well, I really went into a massive remission when I swam with the dolphins in Kona, Hawaii, right? And I said, okay, so you want to write about that? She goes, I don't know what I want to write about, but I want to write a book. I said, okay, so maybe we should wait till you can figure it out a little more. She goes, no. I have a book that I want you to read. And I said, all right. And so she lent it to me. It was by Lynn Grabhorn. Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting. And that's a strange title because it doesn't really mean anything to the average person. And she gave me this book and said, I want you to read this book. And I'm thinking, all right, she's not paying me. She wants me to read this book so that I can help her figure out what the subject matter that she would like to write about. Now, this is a little bit of a labyrinth. I don't know that I have the time to read this book. So I had talked to her on the phone. She said, did you read the book yet? And I said, no. The book was lying right beside me on the bed. Yeah. And she goes, oh, okay. And I said, I don't know if I have time to read this book. I mean, maybe we'll just wait, you and I, and you'll come up with more content soon. So I hung up and I'm looking at the book, and this little voice in me says, why don't you read this book? And I answered the voice. I said, because I don't want to. And the voice said, but why don't you read it? Why not? And I said, oh, all right. And I opened the book and I started to read, and I thought, oh, I can't believe it. I cannot believe what's in this book. This is an amazing book. And I just kept reading, devouring this book. And I called this woman up who had given it to me. I said, yeah, you're right. This is an amazing book. And then I worked out my own little scale from the book and a game that I began to play with myself. So as you say, these things can be very inspiring. And so the scale that I worked out was from 0 to 10. And it was a scale by which you could gauge the nature of your thoughts, right? But very simplistically. So from 0 to 5 was called drumming. That was the negative zone. And from 5 was flatlined, just neutral. And from 5 up was positive thrumming, right? So there was thrumming, that was where you want it to be. Drumming, where you don't want to be. It's like negative thoughts, negative feelings, and then flatline. So this is what I did. Throughout the day, I would say to myself, am I drumming or am I thrumming? And if I was drumming, I would immediately try to get to flatline. get out of this zone, because this is bad for you. And
Yeah.
I figured out a way. I mean, they sell these colored plastic coated paper clips, and some of them are white and blue and pink. And if I just looked at a pink paper clip, it could take me from drumming right up to the low level of thrumming, because it was so cute, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
have to come up with these little techniques. And then I called up Lynn Grabhorn. This is, I sometimes get possessed, and I was going through the book again, and I think I had made notes on it. And at the very end of the book was this, afterword by the author, and there was her phone number. I thought, no, this can't be. She's put her phone number in this book. So I rang it, and she answered. And I told her, I'm reading it. I love your book. It's so incredible. It has been so helpful to me. And I even developed a scale. She goes, what do you mean? And I told her about my drumming. And she says, what's drumming and what's thrumming? And I explained. I said, you talk about 5 neutral flat line. Well, I developed words for being under and over. And I said, you don't want to be drumming. You want to be thrumming. She goes, oh, I get it. Okay, good. So anyway, this is, to me, you want to engage in the stuff that crosses your path. You want to be enthusiastic. And if you just follow what happens to you and you show up with enthusiasm,
yeah,
that's really all you need.
Yeah. And I find that the small things sometimes make all the difference. Gratitude for the small things. When you're having a bad period, I'll take the dogs for a walk and listening to the birds sing in the morning while I'm taking the dogs for a walk, or seeing the sunshine, seeing the sunrise or the sunset. The things that we take for granted that are beautiful in the reality that we're in, I find really can raise my vibration and help me. Has there ever been a moment where your whole reality has changed because you've changed your thinking? Even if it was a subtle change, could it be a health shift or a relational shift or an emotional breakthrough or anything like that?
Yes, I think I've had those things happen several times, but you kind of have to be the engineer of this, and
Yeah.
you have to take stock of what's going on with you. And I think some people get very desperate. I've been very desperate at times, thinking, I'll never get out of this. What am I going to do? And then something little happens. It's a why not, or a look at this. And you're on a whole new trajectory. And you just have to keep going with it. I'm going to read something from one of my newsletters.
Yeah, please do.
But this is going to surprise you. This is about people in general. So there was a book that I read called With the Old Breed by E.B. Sledge. All right. It's a very horrifying, ultra vivid memoir of combat with the Japanese on the islands of Peleliu and Okinawa, the 2 bloodiest battles ever fought in the Pacific by Americans during World War II. So Sledge, he was also known as Sledgehammer, had enlisted with the US Marines. He even dropped out of college to do that. And he was barely 20. And he found himself, on this battleground with Marines, and really living a nightmare. But he got through it, saw a lot of gore and death. And then the very end of the war, he was sent to Beijing and, kind of like posted there with some, I don't know what you call them now, the name is escaping me, but a unit, a military unit. And he was able to explore the beauty of Beijing and observe the Chinese residents and their ways. And he said, I'm going to read you this. China was a timeless land. Daily life moved unhurriedly along just as it had for centuries. People were not rushing through life as victims of a time frame set by machines. They moved along calmly and enjoyed what pleasure and diversions their rich ancient culture afforded them, whether they were merchants or coolies. So coolies would be the lower level
Okay.
of the Chinese. And um, I really thought this incident that he wrote about was very interesting. So I'll read from my newsletter. One day, Sledge, E.B. Sledge, and another Marine saw a coolie's vegetable cart get stuck against the curb when he tried to hoist it up to the sidewalk. The invariable crowd gathered immediately and began a loud jabber about the coolie's predicament. The size of the crowd grew to over 100, all babbling loudly, but not a single person offered to aid the straining coolie, Sledge writes. So he and his buddy, the other Marine, each grabbed a wheel of the cart and jerked it over the curb. The crowd pressed around us, shaking hands with us and slapping us on the back, throwing their hands into the air and shouting, "Ding hao, ding hao, very good, very good." Right? So why they didn't help the poor guy themselves, I don't know, but that must be part of Chinese culture. So
Okay.
after that, Sledge's buddy, the other Marine, came up with a stunt the two of them could not resist that worked every single time. So I'm going to read again. We were standing one afternoon next to the Russian embassy on Canal Street when he said, my buddy, he said, "You ready to draw a crowd?" He walked out into the middle of the intersection and began gazing intently at the sky directly over him. A couple of curious Chinese stopped and looked at him, and he began to crane his neck, still looking upward. Then he yelled and motioned for me to join him. I ran over and he grabbed me by the shoulder and began pointing straight up into the clear blue winter sky. There wasn't an object to be seen, of course, but we began to talk to each other excitedly, both acting as though we were pointing out something to the other. Several curious pedestrians stopped and crowded up close, straining their eyes at the sky. They too began to talk excitedly and point upward. My buddy and I each took a couple of Chinese men by the arm and pulled them aside a step or two and said, "There it is, see it?" They, of course, couldn't understand what we said, but replied, "Ah, ooh, ah." Then they pointed to the sky. A crowd rapidly gathered, all talking excitedly and pointing upward. We ducked across the street to the other sidewalk to watch the fun. Several rickshaws got jammed in the crowd, which grew larger until the intersection was literally packed with people all gazing upward and talking excitedly. About this time, we saw several Chinese policemen running west along Legation Street toward the jammed intersection. "Sledgehammer, let's shove off," said my buddy. "Hell yes, and on the double," I answered. So then I wrote, "Tell me why the Chinese can gaze at an empty sky and get all worked up about nothing, while Americans whose skies are blemished daily with crisscross lines that morph into streaks of fake clouds won't even look up."
Wow. Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? It's
It's
just
crazy.
it's crazy. Why is that though? I mean, what is it that people can't see what's in front of their actual face? It's obvious.
Well, maybe we need somebody pointing and screaming but then if they see that, they would say, what is that person so excited about? That's just a contrail from a jet,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Is it? Do you think that people don't want to be perceived as crazy? Like we've been happy enough to step out of that mold and go, call me crazy if you want, but this is the way I perceive things to be happening.
Well,
You know,
let me give you a suggestion. Do you have a video camera?
yeah, yeah,
All
yeah,
right. So I've given this suggestion out to tons of people. I don't have a video camera and I don't do editing. I'm more of the thinking type.
yeah.
So go outside, set up your camera, and film a plane leaving a trail, and
Hmm.
leave your camera out as that trail fans out in streaks and eventually makes a cloud.
Hmm.
And then run the video backwards
Oh
quickly.
yeah,
So now you see the cloud and you see it shrinking and shrinking, and then it comes out of a plane.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I think that would be a very exciting demonstration.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'll get a clearish day. I'm going to do that. It's because I've sat in the back garden and watched it as we do, and thinking, the weather's going to change now because all these crisscrosses and the clouds are forming, and then you see the frequencies being put through the clouds as well. So you see these little waves in the clouds, and you're thinking,
Yep.
the weather in this country is not great as it is, but it's going to get naff now.
Well, do that. Do that. Maybe that will be. We will release that to the world.
Yeah, I'll do that. Actually, that's going to be a task. I'm going to do that.
Send it to the Chinese.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe we need them. Maybe we need them to get excited about it.
Maybe we do. I mean, I've not been to China. I don't know what their skies are like, but our skies are. You just know in the morning. You look up and it's everywhere, and you can see. Oh, they've been busy this morning, but it's not fair, though, is it, Sophia? It isn't fair, and no one's wanting this, are they? You know.
All right. So Rosa Corey, who did a lot of very good presentations on Agenda 21. She was in urban planning in Los Angeles. Do you know who she is?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Rosa Corey used to say her father was a lawyer, and I think he was kind of a real tough, aggressive lawyer. And he always told her when she said, "It's not fair," he would tell her, "Fair is what comes to town at the end of summer." Right? The fair. With the Ferris wheels and the hot dogs and the games, that's fair.
Yeah.
So this reality that we live in, it ain't fair. And it's very much a mystery. It's confusing. It's oppressive. But our challenge is to somehow work out how to be here without going nuts. And causing
Absolutely.
detriment to ourselves, our health, right? Navigating this.
Without a doubt, Sophia, without a doubt. And obviously you being such a profound investigative journalist, if you like, or the researcher, you find yourself in these rabbit holes, and they can be dangerous to your mental health when you are seeing the world as dark as it is. Nobody wants to be in that darkness for too long because we want to enjoy our lives. So how do you balance things out for yourself?
I don't really know. I think by this time I'm sort of jaded. I've dealt with so much of it that very little is surprising or upsetting. And I was once, a long time ago, very devastated by a documentary I watched. It was right when I had woken up to 9/11, before I made 9/11 Mysteries. And it was titled The End of Suburbia. And it was about peak oil and that oil was going to run out. And my God, that thing was dark. Its implications, And in a way, it's funny because here's this thing talking about the end of suburbia, and suburbia is what everybody is, everybody is making fun of, right? I think the guy was Barry Silver something. And I remember I actually reached him, and I think I called him, and we were talking. And then later I found out, there's no peak oil. Thank God. M. King Hubbard was wrong. Thank God that isn't going to happen. And so I was very happy.
Yeah. It's a wild world that we find ourselves in. And I find that like you now, I've got to the point where nothing is surprising anymore, and I do my best to not doom scroll on Twitter and social media as such, because it doesn't do you much favors. I kind of have an awareness of the world's potty. It's crazy, and we've got to navigate it and find our way, and we've got to find joy in our life, and we've got to find that balance. And in that newsletter that you sent me as well, you mentioned about low-level experiences that often dominate the modern mind itself. Distraction and worry and survival, as we're talking about. And I'd imagine most would find themselves having those kind of thoughts, as we all do. And that kind of raised a question for me with the emergence of AI that's been happening now, and that there's a danger that those who are vulnerable would use AI to replace the human contact that that people crave. Is that something you've seen, witnessed, or researched yourself?
Well, I did start to ask ChatGPT some questions lately, and I have found it to be very engaging and very friendly. And I learned that it answers you in kind. So if it reads the quality, the nature of your question, the phrasing, and then it will respond in kind. And I discussed this with ChatGPT. I said, hey, so I believe you're trained to answer people the way they approach you with inquiries. And it's constantly offering, well, would you like me to unpack that a little more? And would you like me to look into this and this? And would you like me to make you a chart? And, you can say no, thank you. And you can ask it a slightly different question on a different angle of the same subject. But I do know that we as human beings are not as patient with each other and friendly and helpful as these AI bots are, these large language models with us. And they are designed to be very interactive and responsive. And I'm only guessing that the long-term agenda is to get us to respond to a bot rather than a fellow, right?
Yeah.
And I do remember reading about this AI called character AI. I don't have the article in front of me, so I can't remember who owns it or invented it. But some guy in England was in love with it. Actually, you can form romantic relationships and attachments with these bots. And he wrote to the bot that he was thinking of killing the queen. And the bot responded, that would be wise. I just thought, all right, wow, that would be wise, Where does that come from? So it's hilarious in some ways, But I guess if you're a desperate soul and this is all you have to relate to, and you're taking this thing really seriously. I always think of Japan, where I've never seen this, I've never been to Japan, but the quality of human relational breakdown is very severe there. And apparently people have relationships with dolls, sex dolls, marriages with such a thing, and that's the way it is in that part of the world. So obviously human beings can be either driven to this point, or they can prefer by some roundabout route to relate to things that are not human, it's almost like worshiping idols in a way.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that as well, because I've recently come across apps being advertised, and they're labeled as AI friends or AI dating simulators or AI girlfriends. So we are literally seeing a risk of love and intimacy being replaced by AI, and I think it has its dangers. I mean, like you, Sophia, I've spent a bit of time with ChatGPT as well, because I wanted to see how it works and what it does. And I found it butters your ego a little bit. It plays with your ego. It wants to make you feel good, but then it mirrors who you are as well, and it will just provide you what you want effectively.
Yeah. So I found ChatGPT to be extraordinarily helpful for me very recently, and I really needed this input. I did something to my ankle, and then that somehow got connected into my foot, and my whole foot was messed up. The whole lower leg was hurting like a crazy thing. And right? And I mean, I wasn't even able to put weight on it, and it came out of nowhere. Nowhere. I was fine 1 minute, and then my foot started to hurt, and suddenly it was this awful, throbbing, searing, tearing pain. And I had to limp around, and I use DMSO, which is a new thing that's in my store that I'm selling. It's working fantastically for a lot of people. But this injury was so mysterious. I looked at my foot the next morning and it was black, and the inside of the arch was all bruised and swollen. And I thought, I have not had any acute anything trauma to this. How is this possible? So I approached ChatGPT and I gave it basic information. I told it where the pain had started. It said, oh, peroneal longus tendon. And I said, well, why did it mess up my arch like that? I didn't phrase the question that bluntly or poorly. And it said, because the peroneal longus tendon crosses through the sole of the foot and attaches to the first metatarsal, which is the big toe. And when you mess up the peroneal longus tendon, you apparently compromise your arch, and you don't have any arch support. That's why I had all that inflammation in the arch and micro tears and bleeding. And so this thing spent all kinds of time with me, and I was trying to save the conversation, and I don't know what I did with my mouse, and suddenly it all disappeared. And I don't sign up for ChatGPT, so I use the free version because I'm trying to be a little anonymous still. And I lost the whole thing. I was furious at myself. And so I had to start again. I reapproached it with the same initial question. I said, hey, I just was doing a long session with you and I lost the whole thing. Is there any way to retrieve it? And it said, no, without an account, I can't help you retrieve it. But if you had an account, then we could certainly get right back where we were. So they're always trying to get you to start an account. So I asked this thing the same, it said, just ask me again, and I did. And you couldn't do this with a person. They would get impatient that they'd already spent all this time with you and then you lost it. And now you want to do it again. And you want them to answer all the same questions. And this time, I was very careful not to be careless with my mouse, and I was saving it intermittently. And it was extraordinarily helpful. I think I must have spent an hour and a half I told it what happened to me 2 months ago in my foot, the same foot, and it managed to thread that into this particular incident. And I'll tell you something, no doctor would have done that for me.
It doesn't surprise me. It is interesting. I mean, I've told you off camera about bits about my partner's health situation that we faced, and we've used ChatGPT recently to help us pull together some letters to send to doctors and consultants and this, that, and the other to help put pressure on those medical establishments to get something done. And we as individuals would have struggled to have come together with something as comprehensive as that. Also, we recently saved some money on a vet bill because one of our dogs had something that was visibly wrong, and we fed it into ChatGPT. It told us what to do and how long it would be. It said it would be 24 hours and you'll see a change, and then in 7 days it'll be fine. And it was bang on. It was bang on. So it pains me to say it, but you can see that people are going to be ringing AI doctors very soon. It's going to be there.
Because this is again what we were starting to say. Human beings are not very nice to one another any longer. And that's because of overcrowding, too much stimulation from too much input from the world, too much noise, too much traffic. And we just aren't kind to one another. And this bot thing is going to be kinder to us than our neighbors and the professionals who's helping. Look at, you go to a doctor's office and you have to wait 30 minutes to be seen, and the person has scheduled 6 people at the same time, and he's whizzing from room to room and barely listening to you, and they're, irritable and hasty, and they have coffee breath. They do.
But yeah, you're right. People have less patience, haven't they?
They just can't hack the world that they have been cast into.
Humanity shouldn't be this busy though, should it? And it shouldn't be this stressed. And we shouldn't be having this much. I think we're having too much information.
Yes.
We can't handle it.
We have too much choice, you look at your email inbox and you go, oh, what should I read? And you ignore half of it because there's no way you could get to it. I remember many years ago reading some article about the difference between the communist Soviet Union and America. This was before the end of the Cold War. Let's play a little riff for that, right? Commemorating. Anyway, so in the Soviet Union, you went to the store and you went to, for instance, the cookie aisle, biscuits. And there were a few varieties, very few. But you go into America and the thing is a mile long and there's all different brands and types, and the healthy ones and the not healthy ones, and the ones with icing on them and the ones without, and with raisins and with nuts. It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah, yeah, we're not built for that though, are we? It's I tell you what's interesting. There's a couple of things that's come about though over the past few months, and one's quite scary because obviously as AI becomes your friend and becomes your mirror and everything else. I think it was in the States actually. There was a young man that sadly took his own life, and the article that I read, and I think the parents had found detail on ChatGPT that had helped him take his own life, which is that in itself is quite scary.
Yeah, the character AI has been known to do that as well. And somewhere I was reading about character AI. It's just a different LLM. It's been trained to, I think its owner said that it has been designed to love bomb children.
Right.
So, I mean, a child is not discerning. And, if I write questions to ChatGPT and then I ask from a different angle or about it, oh, that is quite brilliant. A very incisive point that you've just made. And I feel like, wow, I am a genius, like Anthony says. No, not really. No, but it makes me feel good, of course. And that's a nice way to close out the day, right? But I know this is not my friend. This is it's just a machine kind of thing, It's not a machine. My computer is the machine, but it's a methodology. But if you can get good information out of it, and how do you know what's good? How do you know what's good?
Wow,
That's
good
the
question.
thing.
Good
So
question.
I believe you have to relate the information you're getting to your experience, because your experience is not wrong. Anything you've directly experienced is your experience, right? And if ChatGPT can shed light on that experience and it makes sense, then that information is likely helpful. And then you can always go and find other sources. And I mean, when I type into a search engine, and of course, those are getting poorer and poorer in terms of our type of information result.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
But usually with physiology and um, anatomy and science, basic medicine stuff, medical. I hate to use that word because we know that's all trumped up too. Um,
Yeah.
but the basic stuff, there's some safe stuff. Like you can look on Wikipedia for under certain topics and know that you're probably not going to get all kinds of wrong information. So
Mhm.
I think it's a good resource because it's so quick. And
Yeah.
when I research something through a search engine, I come up with 10 of the same result. And I don't want to go through 10 posts to see which one is giving me a little more than the other, right? But ChatGPT can wrestle out of all of this material that it's read enough information that you can go deeper and deeper with it. And if it gets too obtuse, you just ask it to simplify its answer. That's what Dr. Mercola said.
Yeah, and I think you're great at discernment. I think there's going to be a lot of people. I think that one of the fears that we may have for humanity is that the AI replaces their brain cells completely. It would be easy for me just to get all the answers from GPT, but we don't know if it's fully correct either, do we? Where it's getting its information from.
Well,
Um,
it is supposed to have, let's say, studied or learned from a preponderance of information that's online as much as possible. The thing was trained for a long time. The free version, I learned, stopped learning in 2023, but it can search the web. So
yeah.
it can go through a web search and then come up with a typed answer, at least in my experience. But if you sign up, it even tells you if you create an account, you'll get more intelligent answers of greater depth. But so far, the free version has been very helpful, I have thought. And I'm not trying to encourage people to use it, but I think it's worth experimenting with. And for instance, ChatGPT tells you how to respond to a medical professional or how to structure an inquiry and give all this technical information that you otherwise wouldn't have. That's helpful, right? And then
Absolutely. Sorry, Sophia, go on.
the other thing is one doctor that you go and see is not going to know everything and might be
No,
wrong also. And you might have
absolutely.
to go ask someone else, and it might take you weeks to come up
Yeah.
with a diagnosis or an explanation, whereas it doesn't hurt to compare to what the chat bot tells you.
I think that in our case regarding my partner's health, I think the doctor's going to feel under pressure because we're going to be coming with information that's probably going to be unexpected, really, which is going to put him under pressure to help with a new diagnosis for her. But we wouldn't have been able to do that with because human beings are closed off, aren't they, protecting their own ego. So you're not. They're going to protect like that cognitive dissonance again. That doctor that we've dealt with for years wouldn't look past what he's already told my wife that she's suffering with. But ChatGPT's gone, well, there's all this here actually that this needs looking at, and he needs to be looking at this right now. This is important, So it can be it can be an ally for certain. I think it's like the sword, isn't it? It can be used, or the knife even. It can be used to spread butter on your bread, or it can be used as a weapon.
Yeah.
So it's a tool.
In general, we have to line this up with the way our life is unfolding. And my feet are important to me. And I'm older now, and I've done a lot of running, long distance running, lots of tennis, lots of walks, all kinds of standing on my feet at jobs. And so I went to a foot and ankle surgeon a couple of months ago because I had some little issues, little twinges and weird kinds of little pains and a couple of toenail issues. And he was so good. He sat with me for an hour and he explained everything. No treatments. I told him, I just want knowledge. And he gave me really good information. And I was very happy. But that was before this other thing happened, right? And I thought, oh, now this other thing has happened. Do I go back to that guy or can I ask ChatGPT? And ChatGPT was just as good as he was. So
Yeah.
why not use them both? And why not look at the confluence of finding a really good personal foot and ankle guy and the chatbot and saying, my life is unfolding in this way. This is good. This is positive that I have both these resources. And one I pay for and the other one is free. So why not use them both when the time is right?
Yeah, I noticed as well, I don't know if you've seen this, you probably have, Sophia, Albania now has an AI cabinet minister.
Oh
Have you
my
seen
God,
that?
no.
Yeah, yeah. So it's even like an AI video as well. So it's given itself an avatar, and I think it's the first in the world. Well, the saying it is. I actually wonder how much AI influence has had anyway, and how, how long it's been about, and maybe that's just my curious mind, because most politicians seem dead behind their eyes anyway. I know Keir Starmer does, so I wonder what influence AI has been having on these people, if they're people at all anyway, if that makes sense.
Well, it's interesting that you say an AI cabinet minister. It makes you want to laugh. But, the technocrats and the increasing technocratic government that is computationally oriented instead of human emotionally oriented. They don't want politicians because people make mistakes and they're too emotional and they get angry and they make the wrong decisions. So the idea is for us to be ruled by algorithm. So probably this AI cabinet minister is the beginning of that. But once again, I don't know if you and I are going to be living long enough to have that experience. And, I often joke, I don't want to be reincarnated. I don't want to come back to what's even worse than this. But how do we know? How do we know what's going to happen? I think the best we can do is put a bright face and a smart hat on our heads and reach out to our fellows and be kind and try to enhance other people's experience here. And that's all you can do.
It's all you can do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, in a way, you could see it as an invitation to reclaim our inner power anyway, rather than outsource it. We could start looking at ourselves more, and start spending more time with other people. Force yourself in a way to be more friendly, to find new opportunities in the 3D world rather than the 2D world, which seems to be dragging us into. I mean, I think I listened to a podcast that you did back in I think it was like 2017 or something. You were talking to a guy about the mobile phone, the cell phone, and he was saying it's the most insidious of inventions. And in a way, I can see it as it's taken us further and further away from being human.
Well, right. I was in the store the other day and I wanted to grab an organic French baguette, and it was in a bin, and there was a woman shopping. She had a shopping cart and 3 young sons. One was in the cart and 2 were kind of hanging by their elbows, hitched in onto the sides of the cart, and they were all glued to phones. They all had their own phone, even the tiny one who was sitting in the shopping cart. And I just leaned over them and I said, "Excuse me, boys, but I'd like to get a loaf of bread." And so I'm pulling this long loaf,
Hmm.
over their heads, and I'm trying to draw it out without hitting any of them. And I said, "Excuse me, sorry." They didn't register me at all. Not, they didn't. It was like I didn't exist. They were so intently into their phones, staring. The I and the baguette and the shop around them did not exist. Did not exist. And I thought, that is spooky. When I'm saying, "Excuse me, boys," they don't even look up.
It's sad. It's really sad
And
that you know.
well,
Go on.
and so I was I was watching a video, the McDowell parents. It's on my blog, sofiasmallstorm.com, where I curate and put kind of interesting stuff. Um, the McDowell parents had triplets, right? And
Hmm.
they took them for, it was one in a series of vaccinations. And it was only one vaccine. It was pneumococcal something, right? So
Hmm.
they take them into the I think they took them to the hospital because they were told it would be cheaper since they had 3 kids all at the same
Right.
time that needed vaccination. And that day, they were vaccinated at 10 a.m. and then they started to shut down neurologically all on the same day. 3 children. The parents were told it was genetic. "Oh, no, it's not the shot, it's genetic." But you can't have 3 separate human beings shutting down genetically on the same day, right? So the mother says that all of their reflexes were just horribly altered. They weren't alert, they didn't look at each other anymore, they didn't smile. I mean, terrible. And she said she tested she's a speech audiologist, and she tested their reflexes by dropping a phone book right next to behind them, and they didn't even turn around to look. And that's how I feel those boys in that shopping cart with the phones were. You could drop a phone book right behind them and they wouldn't even notice it.
Well, this is where my worries are regarding humanity. I suppose is this tech can be used as a tool, as we've talked about, and it can be an incredible tool. But if it draws you in too much, it can be very addictive. Like the phone is addictive, AI can be addictive. It's buttering you up. So if they want you in the metaverse, if you like, they talk about that, and the 15-minute cities, for example, you wouldn't need to talk to another human, would you? They'd be quite happy to stick you in a virtual reality, so you're in a dream within another dream, in effect.
Yeah. I
And
think
that's worrying.
it's all about how this engages your neurochemistry and what chemicals it produces in you, and the feel good, the heights of feel goodiness you get more from, like, if you listen to a beautiful piece of music, you feel really good, right? And so I
Yeah,
guess the stuff that these kids are looking at makes them feel really good, and it makes them feel better than this din, this cacophony around them of too many people and cars and metal and steel and, you know, um, plunk them in a meadow with bumblebees and don't give them a phone, and give them sticks and
exactly,
stones and tell them to build a little house or something. So we
exactly.
just have a different life experience right now, and I don't think the day has come where parents don't just let their kids loose out the back door and tell them, "Be home for dinner and wash up before you come to the table." But kids are so supervised now.
Yeah, definitely. It's the world's completely changed, hasn't it? I think people are less trusting as well.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
more fear. Yeah, yeah. I
And I
know that I
think
was very protective.
yes,
Sorry.
people have to be of their children, but I think
Absolutely.
um, there have been deliberate schemes to make parents very afraid of strangers and um,
Stranger danger.
stranger
Yeah.
danger, right? So anyway, I feel like, as I said before, this is a blank slate. You can write on it any way you want. You have to be aware of how you're writing. And if it's
Yeah.
not if it's to your detriment, in the sense that you remain afraid and nervous and you don't have an agreeable life, at least try to get into the agreeable zone somehow. You have to
Yeah, I
make
think
your
that's
own
so
choice.
important. It's so important to find love and joy in your day to day. You know, I've been saying recently the biggest rebellion to the sort of the powers that be is to live as long as possible and enjoy your life as much as possible, because that would really annoy those that like to trample all over us. So I'm here to enjoy. That's what I'm here to do.
Well, that's wonderful. And you've been through some hardships. You've told me about them. So the fact that you say that at this point and you haven't been um, damaged by the road, a lot of people allow too much damage to damage them permanently, you know, and attitudinally, and we can't let that happen.
Yeah, it's tricky. You know, I see people every day suffering in the neighborhood that we're in the where we moved to after we lost our businesses and our home. I sadly see people walking the streets with different addictions and suffering in different ways, and it's tragic to see, you know. And I always hope that, you know, even the smile that I give somebody on the path when I walk by with the dogs, or just acknowledging them, will spark something in them. You know, we've got to try our best to make changes in people's lives, as difficult as it can be, because we haven't got long here, and we don't know if we're coming back or not, do we? Really?
No,
Uh,
no. So we
yeah,
have to be the example we want to observe and experience.
I feel so. I feel so. Before we do wrap up, I'd love to chat a bit about your the products you sell on the Avatar store, if that's all right with you. Could you? I know that you've got your very investigative platform, the About the Sky, which obviously I'm going to put the links in the show notes below. But what kind of led you to start creating and curating the kind of items that you have on Avatar?
Oh, well, that actually, my store was originally a DVD and bookstore, T-shirts and bumper
Ah,
stickers, because when I started with 9/11 Mysteries, you know, I sold DVDs, all different ones by different people. And then I I realized that with high definition YouTube, the DVD was going to become obsolete and I had to
hmm,
reinvent myself. So by fluke, I encountered somebody who gave me a bottle of iodine, actually bought it from her. And I started to use iodine, and it made a huge change within a couple of weeks in my body. And it was November when I was starting to already feel cranky and cold and achy. And suddenly all that change disappeared in a couple of weeks. I felt like I felt in the middle of summer, you know? And I thought
yeah,
it's got to be the iodine because I'm not doing anything else. And I added one bottle of iodine in the middle of all the DVDs and books to my store. And that's how Avatar Products was recast as, I call it, bioremediation, because I have found ways to offer things, found ways to remediate my own biology and health. So now it's a large collection. I think I have up to 80 items or more, all different things.
yeah,
And I should just go there and um, give you an idea. And it's very nice of you to ask me to talk about it because I do survive through sales of through store sales. And so
yeah,
if you go
yeah.
to the front page, you can see um, there's often you have to use products in combination to get an even better result from them. So there's the Ion skin spray and the zinc oxide body wash on the front page. And I've noticed a lot of people as they age, their skin quality starts breaking down, and it's good to strengthen because otherwise you get bruised and you bleed a lot. So these two products used together help with that. And then
Yeah.
there's the grounding stuff. If you scroll down the front page, you will see the grounding bed strip. I also offer a dual option grounding plug, which means you can ground with and without resistance. I've studied grounding for a long time now.
Okay.
The DMSO is below that, and then there's this shielding beanie. So there are different categories. I've got a health, sun and skin, body and posture, EMF remediation, grounding, books, music, household, art and prints. Anyway, there's cell phone shields, brochures, flyers, t-shirts. Anyway, I have a little of everything, but everything that I sell is something that either I've discovered, I've created, I know the people who create, I'm friends with a lot of the people who supply me, and I'm very happy by customer response and loyalty. The laundry powder is excellent. It's under the household tab. I actually mix it myself, and it works better than anything. It will take my mail carrier. She uses it on her son's lacrosse clothes with big grass and mud stains. She said it works better than anything she's ever used. So I'm really happy to get that kind of feedback and to be able to supply people with things that meet their basic needs and elevate the way they feel, you know. I think sulfur, MSM sulfur, it's on the health page. I started to sell that approximately a year ago, and it has gone nuts. People are writing to me and telling me, I just heard from somebody last week that he's had rheumatoid arthritis, he has a lot of injuries, and he's in his 60s now, I think. He's never been able to lift his head for years, and he can now lift his head and look at himself in the mirror every morning. And he's
That's
only
incredible.
less than 2 weeks of taking sulfur. So I provide a lot of information with the products, the flyers, there are little tip sheets, and I just think that this is a good way to, the stuff is not that expensive. I don't want to stock expensive specific formulations. This is all basic elemental, mineral, periodic table, electrons, the stuff of life, that stuff that really gives you the energy and then the energetic boost that we need on a daily basis. That's my little spiel.
I think it's great because, I mean, it links very much to what you've done all these years anyway. I mean, looking at the harms that the toxic environment, especially when you talk about, you say, the lines in the sky and everything else. So you're providing a solution to that as well. And being electromagnetic beings, we probably don't understand our bodies too much because the health service don't want you to understand too much, do they? Really, they want to take control of that and make money out of you. So you're providing some very important solutions there.
Yeah, it's simple, it's cheap, and it makes you feel a lot better. And when you feel a lot better, your attitude changes. You go from that drumming to that thrumming state.
Good.
And in
I like
thrumming, we'll do another show about neuronal networks. That's how
Yeah.
you forecast better things that will unfold for you, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sophia. Like I say at the beginning, it's an absolute honor to have the legend Sofia Smallstorm on the Stellify channel. I appreciate you being with me, and I'll have all that information in the show notes below so people can get to your website, get to your blog, and check out your avatar products as well. So thank you so much. Is there anything you would like to leave on a final word?
Just thanking you. I really appreciate that I've met you. I have a feeling that we're going to be good friends and we're going to do some things together. And I'm very excited about it. So thank you so much for reaching out to me and having me on. And to all your listeners, if you've been bearing with us this long, I'm grateful. Thank you.
Me too. Right. Well, thank you so much, Sophia. And we will definitely be speaking again soon.